Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly stick to good habits like hitting the gym or eating healthy, while others struggle just to stay consistent? It's not because they're more disciplined or have superhuman willpower. Nope. It's because they've mastered something incredibly simple but life-changing. Tiny, consistent changes. Yeah, those little daily choices you barely notice, they're the secret to transforming your entire life. And that's what Atomic Habits by James Clear is all about. Think of it like this. Imagine you're flying a plane from Los Angeles to New York. If you adjust the nose of the plane by just a few degrees to the south, you'll end up in Washington, D.C. instead. Crazy, right? That tiny shift, almost unnoticeable in the moment, completely changes the destination. Habits work the same way. Small, daily actions can steer your life in a whole new direction, toward success or failure. But let's be real. Building good habits and ditching bad ones? Not exactly easy. Ever tried to start working out only to give up 2 weeks later? Or promised yourself you'd stop scrolling social media before bed, and then found yourself doom scrolling at midnight? It's frustrating. The problem isn't you, it's your system. And that's where this book comes in. What makes this book so powerful is that it gives you a roadmap, a step-by-step guide to building habits that actually stick. Clear dives into the science of why we do what we do, but in a way that's super easy to understand. He's like that friend who always has great advice but doesn't make you feel dumb for asking questions. Plus, he gives practical tips you can start using right away. And let me tell you, this book isn't just for gym-goers or self-help junkies. It's for anyone who wants to level up. Maybe you're trying to be more productive at work, or maybe you just want to stop hitting snooze 5 times every morning. Maybe you're a teacher or a coach looking to inspire others, or you're just trying to break a Netflix binge habit. If you've got something you want to change, big or small, this book has your back. So, whether you're here because you're tired of feeling stuck or just curious about how to make life a little easier, stick around. What you'll learn might just change the way you think about habits and your life for good. The surprising power of Atomic Habits. Imagine a block of ice sitting on a table in a room that's slowly warming up. At first, the temperature is well below freezing, say 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The ice doesn't move. You keep turning up the heat, 26, 27, 28 degrees. Still, nothing happens. Then you reach 32 degrees, and suddenly the ice begins to melt. That's the magic of small, incremental changes. For a long time, they can seem like they're having no impact at all. But then, almost out of nowhere, you see the breakthrough. This is the essence of what James Clear describes in Atomic Habits. The power of small improvements compounding over time to create remarkable results. We often think that success is about making some big, dramatic change, that it's about an overnight transformation or a single monumental effort. But Clear argues that the real key to success lies in the tiny choices we make every day. He calls these atomic habits, because they're small, atomic-sized, yet incredibly powerful when combined over time. By improving just 1% every day, you might not notice the change immediately, but over a year, that's a 37% improvement. This compounding effect works much like compound interest in finance. The benefits may start small, but they grow exponentially as time goes on. Take, for example, the British cycling team, which had a dismal track record for nearly a century. They hired a new performance director, Dave Brailsford, who implemented a philosophy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. Instead of focusing on huge, sweeping improvements, Brailsford looked for tiny, 1% enhancements in every area of performance. Tweaking the seat height, improving the rider's diet, even teaching them the best way to wash their hands to avoid illness. None of these changes seemed revolutionary on their own, but together they created an unstoppable force. Over the next few years, the British cycling team dominated the sport, winning multiple Olympic gold medals and Tour de France titles. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Small habits can have a surprisingly powerful impact when they're repeated over time. But why are we so quick to dismiss small actions in our own lives? Part of the reason is that we're conditioned to seek instant gratification. We want to see results right away, whether it's losing weight, learning a new skill, or advancing in our careers. When the results don't come fast enough, we often give up, assuming our efforts were wasted. What Clear emphasizes is that the most meaningful changes, often go unnoticed at first. Just like the ice cube that seems unaffected until it hits a tipping point, our habits are quietly building momentum beneath the surface. Let's think about this in terms of identity. When we set goals, we often focus on the outcome. I want to run a marathon, or I want to write a book. But goals are really just the destination. What matters more is the system you build to get there. Instead of fixating on the finish line, Clear suggests focusing on becoming the type of person who achieves those goals. For instance, instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I am a runner. This shift in perspective is critical because our habits are a reflection of our identity. The more you repeat a behavior, the more you reinforce the identity associated with that behavior. Running regularly, even if it's just a mile or two at first, reinforces the identity of being a runner. Over time, this identity becomes ingrained, making it easier to maintain the habit. Another reason small habits are so powerful is that they're easy to sustain. Big changes often require big willpower, which can be exhausting. But small changes, they're manageable. You're far more likely to stick with a habit that takes just a few minutes a day than one that requires a dramatic overhaul of your schedule. For example, if you want to start reading more, commit to reading just 1 page a day. It might seem insignificant, but over time, those pages add up. And here's the thing. Once you start, you often find yourself doing more. That's the beauty of lowering the barrier to entry. By starting small, you create a ripple effect that leads to bigger and bigger changes. This approach also helps with breaking bad habits. Instead of trying to quit a bad habit cold turkey, which often feels overwhelming, Clear advises focusing on small, incremental improvements. If you're trying to cut back on sugar, for instance, start by swapping 1 sugary drink a day for water or tea. Then, over time, replace more and more sugary snacks and drinks with healthier options. The idea isn't to be perfect right away, it's to make steady progress that you can sustain for the long haul. Ultimately, the power of atomic habits lies in their ability to compound over time. Just like a small seed grows into a mighty tree with consistent care, small habits can lead to extraordinary results when nurtured daily. But this process requires patience and faith in the system. It's not about seeing immediate results. It's about trusting that the tiny actions you take today will pay off in the future. Success, as Clear puts it, is not the product of one-time transformations. It's the result of small, consistent actions repeated day after day, year after year. As you consider how this principle applies to your own life, start by identifying one small habit you can change today. What's one area where you can make a 1% improvement? Maybe it's drinking an extra glass of water, going to bed 15 minutes earlier, or spending 5 minutes tidying your workspace. Whatever it is, start small and stay consistent. Over time, those small changes will add up to something much greater than the sum of their parts. And that's the surprising power of atomic habits. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. Think back to the last time you set a goal for yourself. Maybe you wanted to lose weight, save more money, or finally get around to learning a new skill like playing the guitar. Chances are you started by deciding what you wanted to achieve and then worked backward to figure out how to get there. But as James Clear explains in Atomic Habits, this approach often leads to frustration and failure. Why? Because it focuses on the outcome rather than the process and, more importantly, overlooks the critical connection between your habits and your identity. Identity is at the core of every habit you form. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. When you repeatedly perform a behavior, you reinforce an identity that aligns with that behavior. For example, if you consistently wake up early to go for a run, you're not just someone who runs, you're a runner. If you spend your evenings writing a few paragraphs, you're not just someone who writes, you're a writer. This shift is powerful because it transforms your habits from things you do into expressions of who you are. And when a behavior becomes part of your identity, it's far more likely to stick. Consider someone trying to quit smoking. If they see themselves as a smoker who's trying to stop, they're framing the habit in terms of what they do. But if they shift their identity and start saying, I'm not a smoker, they're redefining themselves in a way that aligns with their desired behavior. This subtle yet profound change makes all the difference. Instead of relying on willpower to resist the urge to smoke, They're acting in accordance with the kind of person they believe themselves to be. The same principle applies to building positive habits. Let's say you want to lose weight. Instead of focusing on the outcome, like hitting a specific number on the scale, focus on the identity you want to embody. I am a healthy person. From there, every choice you make becomes an opportunity to reinforce that identity. When you choose a salad over a burger, you're casting a vote for being a healthy person. When you go for a walk instead of watching TV, you're reinforcing that belief. Over time, these small actions compound, and before you know it, you're not just someone trying to lose weight, you're living as a healthy person. This identity-based approach also helps to explain why it's so hard to break bad habits. If you've been telling yourself for years that you're someone who procrastinates, that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every time you put off a task, you're reinforcing the identity of being a procrastinator. To break the cycle, you need to challenge that identity and start seeing yourself as someone who values action and productivity. It's not about flipping a switch overnight. It's about taking small, consistent steps that align with your new identity until it becomes second nature. One of the most effective ways to build habits that align with your desired identity is to start with small, easily achievable actions. For instance, if you want to become a reader, start by reading 1 page a day. It's such a tiny commitment that it's almost impossible to fail. But each time you pick up a book, you're casting a vote for the identity of being a reader. As these actions accumulate, they reinforce your belief in yourself, and soon, reading becomes a natural part of who you are. Another key insight from Atomic Habits is that identity-based habits create a positive feedback loop. The more you act in alignment with your desired identity, the stronger that identity becomes. And the stronger your identity, the more motivated you are to continue the behaviors that reinforce it. For example, if you see yourself as a fit and active person, you're more likely to hit the gym regularly, which in turn strengthens your identity as a fit and active person. This virtuous cycle is what makes identity-based habits so powerful and sustainable. Of course, changing your identity isn't as simple as flipping a switch. It requires intentional effort and a willingness to let go of old beliefs about yourself. Start by asking yourself a simple yet profound question. Who do I want to become? Once you have a clear vision of the person you want to be, think about the habits that align with that identity. What does a healthy person do? What does a successful entrepreneur do? What does a loving partner do? By identifying these behaviors, you can begin to align your actions with your desired identity. It's also important to remember that identity is not fixed. You're not stuck being the person you were yesterday, last year, or even a decade ago. Your identity is shaped by your habits, and your habits are shaped by your identity. This means you have the power to redefine yourself at any time by changing the actions you take. It's a dynamic process that allows for growth and transformation. As you work on aligning your habits with your desired identity, keep in mind that perfection is not the goal. There will be days when you slip up or fall back into old patterns. What matters is that you don't let those moments define you. Instead, see them as opportunities to reaffirm your commitment to your new identity. Every action is a chance to cast a vote, and no single vote will determine the outcome. What counts is the majority. The connection between habits and identity is one of the most profound lessons in Atomic Habits. By shifting your focus from outcomes to identity, you can create lasting change that goes far beyond achieving a single goal. You're not just building habits, you're becoming the kind of person who embodies those habits. And that's where true transformation happens. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your actions shape the person you become. The 4 laws of behavior change habits don't just happen. They're the result of a deliberate sequence of events that unfolds each time we repeat a behavior. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, breaks this process down into a simple framework. Cue, craving, response, and reward. Understanding this sequence is the first step to mastering the art of behavior change. Each of these stages offers a unique opportunity to influence your habits, making them easier to build or break depending on your goals. Clear's 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Align with this framework and serve as a guide for shaping our actions in meaningful ways. Think of a habit you've always wanted to establish. Maybe it's starting a morning exercise routine. For many, the challenge lies not in the exercise itself but in the steps leading up to it. The cue might be the alarm clock going off, signaling the start of a new day. But if the cue isn't strong or obvious enough, it's easy to hit snooze and roll over. That's why the first law, make it obvious, is so critical. A small adjustment, like setting your running shoes by the door or placing your workout clothes right next to your bed, can dramatically increase the likelihood of taking action. The clearer the signal, the less mental energy it takes to follow through. The second stage, craving, is all about motivation. We don't crave the habit itself. We crave the outcome it promises. You don't necessarily want to exercise, you want the feeling of accomplishment and the health benefits it provides. This is where the second law, make it attractive, comes into play. By associating your desired habit with something you enjoy, you can amplify its appeal. Imagine pairing your workout with a playlist of your favorite upbeat songs or treating yourself to a smoothie afterward. Suddenly, the idea of exercising becomes less about effort and more about enjoyment. Next comes the response, the actual habit you perform. This step is where many people falter because they overcomplicate things. The third law, make it easy, addresses this by emphasizing simplicity and reducing friction. If you want to start exercising, don't aim for an hour-long workout on your first day. Instead, commit to 5 minutes. The easier the habit is to perform, the more likely you are to stick with it. Over time, as the habit becomes ingrained, you can gradually increase its complexity. Think of it like planting a seed. Start small, nurture it consistently, and watch it grow. Finally, there's the reward. This is what reinforces the habit and makes you want to repeat it. The fourth law, make it satisfying, ensures that the behavior feels rewarding in the moment. Imagine checking off a day on a calendar every time you complete a workout. That simple act provides a sense of accomplishment and creates a visual reminder of your progress. Humans are naturally drawn to instant gratification, so finding ways to make your habits immediately rewarding is key. Interestingly, these same laws can be flipped to help you break bad habits. Let's say you're trying to reduce your screen time. The first step is to make it invisible, which is the inverse of making it obvious. You could put your phone in another room or disable notifications to reduce the cue's visibility. Next, make it unattractive by reframing how you view excessive screen time. Instead of thinking about the entertainment it provides, focus on the time it takes away from more meaningful activities. Then, make it difficult by introducing friction, like setting up app limits or requiring a password for access. Finally, make it unsatisfying by adding accountability. Share your goal with a friend who can check in on your progress or use apps that track and report your usage. Each law works in harmony with the others, creating a comprehensive system for habit management. Consider how these principles might apply to a common goal like eating healthier. To make it obvious, you could place fruits and vegetables at eye level in your fridge. To make it attractive, you could learn to prepare them in delicious ways or pair them with dips and sauces you enjoy. To make it easy, start by incorporating just one healthy snack into your day rather than overhauling your entire diet. And to make it satisfying, reward yourself with a treat or acknowledge your progress in a journal. One of the most powerful aspects of this framework is its adaptability. Whether you're trying to build a positive habit or break a negative one, the 4 laws provide a clear and actionable roadmap. They remind us that habits are not just about willpower or motivation. They're about designing an environment and a process that supports the behaviors we want to cultivate. By focusing on the system rather than the outcome, we can create habits that not only stick but also transform our lives in meaningful ways. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. Think about the last time you struggled to stick with a habit you genuinely wanted to build. Maybe you planned to work out every morning, but the cozy pull of your warm bed kept winning. Or perhaps you intended to read more, but the allure of scrolling through social media on your phone was just too strong. It's easy to blame these lapses on a lack of motivation. After all, isn't motivation the fuel that drives change? But as James Clear explains in Atomic Habits, relying on motivation alone is a trap. Motivation is fleeting, inconsistent, and unreliable, especially when compared to the power of your environment. Our surroundings play a silent but potent role in shaping our behavior. They either push us toward positive habits or pull us into old, counterproductive patterns. Imagine you walk into a room where your running shoes are neatly placed by the door, ready for you to slip on, versus a room where the remote control is perched on the armrest of the couch. The setup of these spaces silently nudges you toward entirely different actions. When you optimize your environment, you create a space where the desired habit feels like the most natural choice. The trick is to make good habits obvious and convenient while making bad habits less accessible. Consider the story of Anne Thorndike, a primary care physician who conducted an experiment in a hospital cafeteria. She wanted to see if she could improve people's eating habits without requiring them to consciously think about it. By simply placing bottled water in more visible locations, like at eye level and near the cash registers, she noticed a significant increase in water sales and a corresponding decrease in soda purchases. The takeaway? People's choices were shaped not by willpower or motivation but by the design of their environment. The easier it is to engage in a habit, the more likely you are to stick with it. Conversely, the harder it is to indulge in a bad habit, the less likely you are to give in. This principle is closely tied to the idea of visual cues. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for prompts, and these cues act as triggers that initiate behavior. A cluttered desk piled with papers and knickknacks may subtly suggest procrastination or overwhelm. In contrast, a clean workspace with a notebook and pen positioned just so can prompt focus and productivity. If you want to write more often, keep a notebook and pen within reach, or leave your laptop open to a blank document. If you want to eat healthier, place a bowl of fresh fruit on the counter and hide the chips in the back of a high cabinet. These small tweaks may seem inconsequential, but they carry enormous weight when compounded over time. Another fascinating example of the environment's impact can be found in the habits of cultures around the world. In Japan, homes are traditionally designed with a sense of minimalism and order. Shoes are removed at the entrance, and everything has a designated place. This cultural emphasis on tidiness reinforces habits of cleanliness and respect for shared spaces. Similarly, environments that are chaotic or disorganized often encourage habits of avoidance, such as shoving things into junk drawers or leaving dishes in the sink. Your physical surroundings are constantly influencing you, whether you realize it or not. One powerful way to take control of your environment is to design it with intention. Start by asking yourself what habits you want to cultivate and what behaviors you want to avoid. Then audit your surroundings. Are they aligned with your goals? If you want to drink more water, make sure you have a water bottle within arm's reach at all times. If you want to cut back on late-night snacking, avoid keeping chips or cookies in the house altogether. You don't need superhuman willpower if your environment is set up to make the desired behavior effortless. Technology also offers both opportunities and challenges when it comes to shaping our habits. On the one hand, apps and gadgets can provide helpful reminders and track your progress. On the other hand, the constant barrage of notifications and easy access to distractions can derail even the best intentions. To harness technology in your favor, use it to reinforce good habits rather than encourage bad ones. For example, set a recurring calendar reminder to stretch or take a short walk. Use apps to block distracting websites during focus hours. Unsubscribe from email lists that clutter your inbox and sap your energy. These small changes create an environment, both physical and digital, that supports your goals rather than undermines them. A key takeaway from this chapter is that environment design is not about perfection but about making small, deliberate adjustments. These tweaks should remove friction for positive habits and add friction for negative ones. For example, if you want to practice guitar more often, leave it out on a stand in your living room instead of tucked away in its case. If you want to stop hitting snooze in the morning, place your alarm clock across the room so you're forced to get out of bed. These changes don't require Herculean effort. They're simple shifts that make the right choice easier and the wrong choice harder. One of the most liberating aspects of this approach is that it removes the need to constantly rely on self-control. Willpower is a finite resource, and it's easy to feel discouraged when it seems like you're fighting an uphill battle against your own impulses. But when your environment does the heavy lifting, you're no longer locked in a daily struggle. Instead, your surroundings naturally guide you toward the behaviors you want to adopt. It's like swimming with the current instead of against it. You still have to move, but the effort feels far more manageable. Ultimately, the environments we create shape the people we become. By designing spaces that align with our goals, we can shift the odds in our favor and set ourselves up for success. The beauty of this principle is its simplicity. You don't need a perfect plan or endless motivation. You just need to make the right actions the path of least resistance. Over time, as your environment nudges you toward positive habits, you'll find yourself effortlessly making choices that once felt difficult. And as those choices accumulate, they'll lead to the kind of transformation that lasts. How to keep your habits on track. Building habits is one thing, but keeping them on track is where the real challenge lies. Many people start strong. They're motivated, enthusiastic, and eager to make a change, but over time that initial spark fades. Life gets in the way, unexpected obstacles arise, and before long, those once promising habits fall by the wayside. This is where the importance of systems comes into play. Habits don't thrive on motivation alone. They need a structure to support them, and one of the most effective tools for maintaining that structure is habit tracking. Imagine for a moment you're trying to establish a daily exercise routine. At first, the excitement of starting something new propels you forward. But as the days turn into weeks, that excitement wanes, and the temptation to skip a workout grows stronger. This is where a habit tracker can make all the difference. By marking off each day you complete your workout, you create a visual representation of your progress. Over time, this simple act of tracking becomes its own source of motivation. You don't want to break the streak you've built, and that desire keeps you coming back, even on days when you're not feeling particularly motivated. The beauty of habit tracking lies in its simplicity. You don't need fancy apps or complex systems. A pen and paper will do. The key is to make your progress visible. When you can see how far you've come, it reinforces your commitment and gives you a sense of accomplishment. Each checkmark or colored square is a small win, a tangible reminder that you're moving closer to your goals. And those small wins add up. Over time, they create a sense of momentum that carries you forward, even when the initial enthusiasm has faded. But habit tracking is more than just a motivational tool. It's also a powerful diagnostic instrument. When you track your habits, you create a record of your behavior that you can review and analyze. This makes it easier to identify patterns and pinpoint areas where you might be struggling. For example, if you notice that you consistently miss your workouts on Mondays, you can dig deeper to understand why. Maybe your weekends are particularly busy, and you're too tired to exercise at the start of the week. Armed with this insight, you can adjust your approach, perhaps by scheduling lighter workouts on Mondays or prioritizing rest on Sundays to set yourself up for success. Of course, even the best systems aren't foolproof. There will be times when you slip up, miss a day, or fall short of your goals. This is where it's crucial to anticipate obstacles and have a plan in place to overcome them. One effective strategy is to adopt the mindset of never miss twice. Missing a day isn't the end of the world, but letting that slip turn into 2, 3, or 4 days can quickly derail your progress. By committing to get back on track immediately after a misstep, you prevent a minor setback from snowballing into a major problem. Let's say you're trying to build a habit of reading for 20 minutes every evening. One night, you're particularly busy and don't get around to it. Instead of dwelling on the missed opportunity, you decide to double down the next day. You set aside an extra 10 minutes to make up for the lost time and reaffirm your commitment to the habit. This proactive approach keeps your momentum intact and reinforces the idea that missing a day doesn't mean failure. It's simply a temporary deviation from your path. Another critical component of keeping habits on track is creating accountability. While internal motivation is important, external accountability can provide an additional layer of support. This might mean sharing your goals with a friend, joining a group of like-minded individuals, or working with a coach or mentor. When someone else is aware of your goals and invested in your success, it adds a layer of social pressure that can help keep you on track. Knowing that someone is expecting an update or checking in on your progress can be a powerful motivator, especially on days when you're tempted to slack off. To illustrate, consider a writer working on their first novel. Writing every day can feel like a daunting task, especially when inspiration is lacking. But if they join a writing group or partner with a fellow writer, they create a system of mutual accountability. Each week, they're expected to share their progress or submit a new chapter for feedback. This external expectation keeps them writing, even when their internal motivation wavers. Over time, the habit of writing becomes ingrained, and the support of the group reinforces their commitment. Accountability doesn't have to come from other people. It can also come from the environment you create for yourself. For example, if you're trying to establish a habit of going to the gym, you might lay out your workout clothes the night before or set a reminder on your phone. These small cues act as prompts, nudging you toward the behavior you want to reinforce. Similarly, if you're trying to eat healthier, you might stock your kitchen with nutritious foods and remove tempting snacks. By shaping your environment to support your goals, you make it easier to stay on track and harder to fall into old patterns. Ultimately, keeping your habits on track comes down to consistency and resilience. It's not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about showing up, day after day, and making incremental progress. Some days will be easier than others, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep moving forward, even when the road gets rough. By using tools like habit tracking, anticipating obstacles, and creating systems of accountability, you give yourself the best possible chance of success. And as those small, consistent actions accumulate over time, they lead to meaningful, lasting change. The Goldilocks rule and staying motivated. Imagine trying to learn a new skill, like playing the piano. If you only play simple scales day after day, it won't be long before boredom sets in, and your motivation begins to wane. On the other hand, if you attempt complex concertos right out of the gate, the frustration of repeated failure can be just as discouraging. Somewhere between these extremes lies the sweet spot, a level of difficulty that challenges you but remains within reach. This is the essence of the Goldilocks rule, the idea that the most engaging and sustainable habits exist within the zone of manageable difficulty. The Goldilocks rule explains why humans are naturally drawn to tasks that provide just the right balance of challenge and skill. When a task is too easy, we become bored. When it's too hard, we become overwhelmed. But when the challenge is just right, it captures our attention and keeps us engaged. Think about video games, for instance. A well-designed game gradually increases in difficulty, matching your growing skill level and keeping you motivated to continue. This principle applies not just to games but to any area of life where you're trying to develop a new habit or skill. One of the key reasons the Goldilocks rule works so well is that it taps into our intrinsic desire for growth. We are wired to seek progress and mastery, and the sweet spot of manageable difficulty provides the ideal environment for that growth. For example, if you're learning to run, starting with short, manageable distances and gradually increasing the challenge keeps you motivated. Each step forward is a small victory that reinforces your belief in your ability to improve. Conversely, trying to run a marathon on your first day would likely lead to frustration and defeat, while sticking to a leisurely stroll might fail to inspire any sense of achievement. James Clear illustrates this concept in Atomic Habits with real-world examples that highlight the importance of maintaining the right level of challenge. Consider athletes who push themselves to shave fractions of a second off their best times, or musicians who practice a difficult passage repeatedly until they can perform it flawlessly. These individuals thrive because they found a way to stay within the Goldilocks zone, continually pushing their limits without exceeding them. But even within the Goldilocks zone, maintaining motivation isn't always easy. One of the biggest obstacles to staying engaged with a habit is the inevitable onset of boredom. No matter how well-designed or meaningful a habit may be, repetition can eventually lead to monotony. This is where the willingness to embrace boredom becomes a critical skill. As Clear points out, the difference between professionals and amateurs often comes down to their ability to perform consistently, even when the initial excitement wears off. Professionals understand that mastery requires showing up day after day, regardless of how they feel in the moment. To make this idea more relatable, think about brushing your teeth. It's not an inherently exciting activity, but you do it consistently because you recognize its importance to your overall health. The same principle can be applied to any habit. When you accept that boredom is a natural part of the process, you're less likely to abandon your efforts when the novelty fades. Instead, you can focus on the long-term benefits and the identity you're building through your actions. A practical way to combat boredom and stay motivated is to introduce variety and small challenges within the framework of your habit. If you're trying to exercise regularly, for instance, switching up your routine with new activities or goals can keep things fresh. Similarly, if you're working on a creative project, experimenting with different techniques or exploring new ideas can reignite your enthusiasm. The key is to strike a balance between consistency and novelty, ensuring that your habit remains engaging without losing its structure. Another crucial aspect of staying motivated is recognizing and celebrating progress. Even small wins can have a powerful impact on your sense of accomplishment and your desire to keep going. This is why tracking your habits can be so effective. Whether it's a checklist, a journal, or a digital app, seeing your progress visually reinforces your commitment and provides a tangible reminder of how far you've come. These moments of recognition create a positive feedback loop that fuels your motivation to continue. It's also worth noting that motivation doesn't have to come from within. External accountability can play a significant role in keeping you on track. Sharing your goals with a friend, joining a community, or working with a coach can provide the encouragement and support you need to stay engaged. When others are invested in your success, it creates an additional layer of commitment that can help you push through periods of doubt or fatigue. Ultimately, the Goldilocks rule teaches us that the key to sustaining motivation lies in finding the right balance. By aligning your habits with your current skill level, embracing boredom as part of the process, and celebrating progress along the way, you can create a system that keeps you engaged and moving forward. This approach not only helps you build better habits but also fosters a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment. As you continue to refine your habits and navigate the challenges of growth, remember that every step you take within the Goldilocks zone is a step closer to the person you want to become. People often think success is like climbing this massive, impossible mountain. They imagine there's this huge, dramatic moment when everything just clicks. But honestly, that's not how it works. Success is more like a drip. It's the tiny, barely noticeable drops that add up over time to fill the bucket. And the best part? You don't need to start with a flood, you just need to start with one small, consistent drop. Imagine trying to get in shape. You don't wake up one day, do 1,000 push-ups, and magically have the body of a superhero. No, you do a few push-ups every day. Maybe it's 5, then 10, then 20. You keep showing up, and before you know it, you've built a habit that shapes you into the kind of person who exercises regularly. It's not glamorous, but it works. And that's the beauty of small habits. They're sneaky in the best way possible. Here's the kicker. There's a science to making these small habits stick, and it's all about the 4 laws of behavior change. It's like having a cheat code for life. First, make it obvious. Want to drink more water? Put a water bottle where you can't miss it. Second, make it attractive. Maybe that means buying a fancy bottle that makes drinking water feel cool, or at least cooler than it sounds. Third, make it easy. Don't aim for a gallon a day right away. Start with 1 glass. And finally, make it satisfying. Give yourself a little fist pump every time you take a sip or use one of those apps that turns tracking into a game. But wait, what about breaking bad habits? The good news is the same rules work, just in reverse. You make the bad habit invisible, unattractive, hard, and unsatisfying. Hate how much time you waste on social media? Delete the apps from your phone. Suddenly, scrolling isn't so effortless anymore, and you're less likely to fall into the trap. Now I get it. This all sounds simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. You're probably thinking, okay, but what if I mess up? What if I skip a day or two? Here's the thing, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress. If you focus on getting just 1% better every day, you'll be amazed at how far you can go. 1% might not feel like much in the moment, but over time, it compounds into something extraordinary. It's like putting money into a savings account. At first, it's just a few pennies of interest, but keep it up, and one day you're looking at a balance that makes you do a double take. Think about it. If you design your environment to support positive habits, track your progress, and lean on tools like accountability partners or habit trackers, you're setting yourself up for success. It's like creating a safety net for when life inevitably throws you off balance. You're not relying on motivation. which we all know is about as dependable as Wi-Fi during a storm. Instead, you're building systems that practically do the heavy lifting for you. And let's not forget the benefits here. Imagine waking up and feeling confident because you've got a game plan. You're not winging it anymore. You're building habits that not only get you closer to your goals, but also reduce stress along the way. Whether it's personal goals like getting healthier or professional ones like being more productive, mastering these small, consistent actions can transform your life. The truth is, success doesn't have to feel like a battle. It's about understanding how habits shape us one choice at a time. So, the next time you think about making a change, remember you don't need a big, dramatic overhaul. You just need to show up, cast your votes, and let the power of tiny, consistent actions do the rest.